Sue Moroney.
Mr Speaker, it's a pleasure, a real pleasure this time, actually, to rise and speak on the third reading of this bill, which actually started out being called the Employment Standards Legislation Bill. And anyone listening to that title thought, what on earth is that all about? Well, it turned out that it was about people's basic rights, people's ability to actually have dignity at work, people's ability to have time to spend with their families, people's ability to focus on their children and help them to get the best start in life. Those are some very basic requirements for what should be people's happy and fulfilling lives. But sadly, Mr Speaker, in this House, we've become so used to debating things that actually take away from people, that actually diminish people and their place in their world, that yes, we are feeling somewhat relieved to be able to celebrate this victory today. And it is a victory. It's a triumph of democratic participation. And that's the thing that I feel most moved by with what we have achieved here today, because it is through people in their large organisations like unions working collectively, down to individual people coming along and making a difference, and everything in between that has made this work. And Mr Speaker, we could be used to, in this Parliament, doing things much more in this fashion if we had a progressive government that was listening to the people more frequently and understanding what the issues were. Because it shouldn't be an infrequent victory for us to be able to do the right thing by New Zealand people. It shouldn't be that we feel, as members of Parliament, that this is almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Parliament to come together and do the right thing in such a common-sense way, in a way that actually improves people's lives. Mr Speaker, today people, I think, are getting a glimpse of the government in waiting. They are able to see that a Labour-led government, under Andrew Little, who started off this debate for the Labour Party, that we will be able to lead and make sure that the issues that really matter to people's day-to-day lives are addressed, and that we'll work with a range of other parties, some of whom we're used to dealing with, and I want to thank all the parties that have worked with us in the Select Committee to achieve what we've been able to achieve together over the previous months, but also with parties that we're not so used to working with. And I want to acknowledge Ian Lees-Galloway, who has done a magnificent job in leading the fight for getting absolutely rid of 0 hours contracts, not just tolerating them and moving around the edges with them, but completely getting rid of them. That is the work that has been led by Ian Lees-Galloway. And in order to do that, he's been working with the National Party, and I've been giving him a little bit of jip about that from time to time, but hey, he just has to remind me that in order to actually increase paid parental leave, I've been working with the ACT Party, and I quite quickly remember that it's all a matter of degrees. But it's worth it, because it makes a real difference in terms of people's lives, and that is what certainly I came here to this House to do, and I know that's what my Labour colleagues came here to do as well. Mr Speaker, the 0 hours contracts and the fact that they will no longer exist in New Zealand is a big victory. I think internationally 0 hours contracts continue to hamper workers internationally, and no one has yet found the solution. I think we have found the solution. I think here in little old Aotearoa, New Zealand, we've found the solution. And it sounds pretty simple, and the Minister wants to diminish its importance, but that workers have to have now guaranteed hours of work before they can be required to be made available for this type of work is a substantial movement. And for the Labour Party, we were not prepared to put our name to this legislation until that occurred, because the guaranteeing of minimum hours of work will make a big difference for all manner of workers. And I stand here as a mother of teenage children about to enter the workforce, I hope, and for me, knowing that they have that security makes a big difference to how I feel about them making their way in that part of the world. But it's not just young people, it's women, women who have worked for many, many years and are very expert in their roles who have been exposed to and subjected to 0 hours contracts. It is migrant workers who have been subjected to 0 hours contracts, and it is increasingly been going into areas. We actually had a lawyer come along to our select committee and tell us about her experience of being expected to be on a 0 hours contract, having put herself through that training, gained all that knowledge and that qualification, only to find that 0 hours contracts were the only thing on offer for her. So it is substantial and it is significant. But the story I really want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, is the extensions and the very good extensions to paid parental leave that have occurred under this bill. I want to thank the 26 for Babies Coalition, because they have worked relentlessly on this issue, and they will continue to work relentlessly on this issue until we do achieve 26 weeks paid parental leave. But some of the measures that have ended up happening in this bill are because of their work. So large organisations like Plunkett, like Barnardo's, like many of like the Council of Trade Unions and many other trade unions in this country have contributed to that debate and led that debate. But it's also about what a difference one woman can make, Mr. Speaker. It's about the difference that even just one woman can make, because actually the idea of having additional support for families where a baby is born preterm came from a simple submission that was made on a bill that went through a Parliament last year in my name. Was the submission of a woman by the name of Danelle Bellinger-Taylor. She came along to our select committee and she simply told her story. And I say simply, but actually I looked around the room after she told her story, and I don't think there was a dry eye in that room, and that includes the officials, and that takes some doing, but she was just talking about her life. And she talked about that the pressures on her when she gave birth to twins, and she had also another young child as well. So she had 3 young children under the age of 5, 2 of whom were new entrants to the world. They were twins, and she, through financial circumstances, had to go back to work when they were 5 months old. She talked about what her day looked like. That's the simple story she told. That's what had us in tears. It was about not being completely and utterly sleep deprived, being up either feeding one twin or the other, and then taking public transport to her job the next morning. Taking public transport actually to early childhood education facility to drop her twins off, and then getting on public transport and getting to work, and then on 3 occasions through the day going back to feed those twins, getting back to work, finishing the end of the day exhausted, getting on the train, going home again, and then going through the exercise all over again for 5 days of the week. And it was her submission, Mr. Speaker, that kept me awake at night, that made me think about, should, on the off chance, my bill not proceed all the way through its final stages, that if I got the opportunity to amend it, it was this group of families that I would work to support. Mr. Speaker, I took an amendment like that to this House last February 2015. I really thought it was going to get the full support of the whole House because it was so affordable and it made so much sense. Sadly, on that occasion, the national government let us down because what they did was they voted against that very small measure. However, subsequently, they found it, after a lot of lobbying and a lot of campaigning, they found it in their hearts to finally come good on this issue, and I thank them for doing that. But hey, I want to say to the voters out there and the public listening to this debate, let's just cut out the middleman. Let's just cut out the middleman in these sorts of debates. We could get progress much sooner, much faster, with a Labour-led government being supported by a range of other parties in this Parliament, and we could have had the babies born preterm for the last 14 months could have had this measure. They could have already had additional paid parental leave if it wasn't for politics being played over their lives. Today, we've learnt, I hope we've learnt as a House, how to stop playing politics with people's lives and simply get on with it. Mr Speaker, I'm going to continue to push for 26 weeks of paid parental leave for all families who are eligible for paid parental leave, and I hope that the government will do what we've exhibited today and come on side with that, not play politics, not threaten financial vetoes, but do the right thing for families because it is the right thing to do. Because it is the right thing to do. Take a lesson from what this side of the House has been able to do in this instance in order to do the right thing for New Zealanders.